2024 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals zoning. Present here today are John Bennett, Chappie McKay, Robin Richards, and me, your chair, Jeff Tibbles, present from the planning staff are Penny Ashby, Craig Bennett, and Robert Summerfield. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask those who speak, please identify yourself for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and the recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The Board of Zoning Appeals usually, but not always, approves uncontested applications. The Board of Zoning Appeals, for all applications, the board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the matter as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals zoning has the authority to do three things. Number one, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Number two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And number three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to the other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. By our city's ordinance, I'm required to swear you in to tell the truth if you intend to speak tonight. So if you do intend to speak, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You'll signify by saying I do. We do have one and likely two deferrals this evening. One deferral was prior to the meeting. That's B3 209 Wentworth Street is being deferred. So if you're here for B3, that will not be heard on 209 Wentworth. So
B8 also deferred.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
You said which one? I'm sorry.
B8.
B8. Okay.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Thank you. B8 is also deferred. 176 Smith Street is also deferred prior to the meeting this evening. All right, so we'll go into our agenda. Item A is review of minutes and deferred applications from previously advertised BZA-Z agendas. Number one, review minutes of the December 3rd, 2024 board meeting. The draft meeting minutes have been circulated to you board members in your packet of materials for this meeting. Do we have all four of you attended, all four of us attended the December 3rd meeting, correct? I know I did. Okay, so you got the draft meeting minutes. Any comments, questions, or do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Mr. Bennett moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll give it to Ms. Richards. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda, I unfortunately have to be recused from this item, and so Mr. Bennett will chair this item in my absence. Thank you, sir.
The next item is A2, 580 Savannah Highway, Moreland. Due to a lack of quorum with our chair's recusal, this item will have to be deferred to a future meeting. We'll work with city staff to pick a time for when that will take place. It sounds like be a special meeting that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So if I might, just a couple things I want to put on the record. One, we apologize. This was a very last minute. I know some folks from the community have come out as well as the applicant's representative. This was a very last minute, like literally minutes before the meeting was to start, that we got word that we did not have one of our members who was supposed to be here this evening. Two, council is actually voting tonight on an amendment to the code that will allow us to have alternates for this board as well as a couple of our other boards that will help us address questions around ensuring that we have a quorum for items when we have a recusal like we have this afternoon or this evening, as well as if we just, things happen and may not have enough members. So we are addressing the issue. We may be doing a special meeting. We will inform all the contacts we have relative to this item, the applicant's representative, as well as folks from the neighborhood that we have contact information for, to let them know if a special meeting will be held, and if so, when and how to access that. Otherwise, we would anticipate this item being back at the, again, not 100%, but the first meeting in February. Because we only have one meeting in January and that agenda is rather packed at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Summerfield. That'll move us back to item D1, 383 Sumter Street. I'll let our chair return and present this item.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bennett. The next item on our agenda, section B, new applications, number 1, 383 Sumter Street, West Side, Council District 6, TMS number 460-07-02-152, Zone DR2F, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to build a rear addition, bathroom and closet with a 55.76% lot occupancy, 49.95% existing, 50% allowed. The owner is Warren Behaven. The applicant is Patrick Orpus, Arwen Studio. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this item is for property located here on Sumter Street in the West Side neighborhood. As mentioned, it's in the DR2F zoning category. You can see that it's pretty much in line in terms of lot size, configuration, very rectangular lot, as we would anticipate in this this area. You can kind of see the aerial here from Google Street View application. We do have indication that the owners via their consultants did oh, that's actually not those letters. Those are coming up. But anyway, they did reach out to their neighbors. I don't believe we received any comments back on this particular application. So a couple things here. So the modification that they're doing would eliminate an existing deck and essentially expand the master bedroom. You can kind of see that better on this floor plan. So on the plan left, you can see where the existing floor plan includes the deck in the back. The proposal would take the deck away, would add some closet space to the master bedroom. It would actually reconfigure the bathroom and add an additional bathroom. While staff is complimentary of the applicant for staying within the single story nature of this, placing this to the rear of the home. Because this is a variance, we had to look at what are the exceptional hardship conditions for the lot. We did not find anything relative to the lot for granting the variance. And so while we are very much in support of the direction that they were going, the fact that it required the variance for the lot coverage on this site, staff reluctantly has to recommend for denial.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody here in opposition to the application for 383 Sumter? Anybody in opposition? Okay, so do we have Patrick, you're here? Like to speak to the application?
Thank you, Mr. Summerfield, for your summary. We will thank you for everybody for being here. Just like to state and point out, the required single-family lot size in a DR2F is 2,500 square feet, and our lot is only 2,140. So we are already significantly under what is allowed from that zoning district for a new lot we're subdivided now. So along those lines, what we're asking is still well under that 50% of what a 2,500 square foot lot would be. If you pull back up that aerial view you had, you can see most of the other houses on the same similar size lots are well over that 50% threshold already. This is probably the only house in the block area that's not. And in my opinion, we're not asking for a large variance here. You know, we are currently with that deck at 49.5. We're asking to go not quite 56. We're not asking to go to 75. It's a very, very minor increase to allow a young couple the opportunity to add that second bathroom, add that master suite for what they're planning to be a growing family over the next couple of years. So it does become a little bit of a use and livability factor. We did reach out to the neighbors as much as possible. We sent mailers to all the surrounding and most impacted. We did not hear anything back from those direct mailers, but we did try to meet with the West Side Neighborhood Association. And unfortunately, that meeting got canceled due to some scheduling conflicts, but I was able to sit down with the vice president. I do have a letter of support. I can pass that around, Mr. Bennett. From the West Side Neighborhood Association, like I said, in support of the project and the variance. I think that's really all I'd like to say.
Can you tell us what the, if you could identify for the board an extraordinary or exceptional condition pertaining to the property?
So in terms of the zoning code and the way it's written, I would answer that by saying that it's an exceptional position because the lot is not currently sized for a DR2F property. So in a DR2F 2,500 square foot property, I would be allowed to cover 50%, which is sorry, my mouth is not working right now.
No. So the
22
size of the lot and the small lot is the exception, is the exceptional condition. Okay.
How does that relate to the neighboring properties in terms of
of
size, just size?
It's similar in size, smaller than some, but similar in size to the ones directly adjacent. The one on the corner right next to it is much larger. The ones two down to it are very similar in size, but they do cover more than 50% of the lot. And what we didn't want to do was build it up. We didn't want to try to build up. We are, for the most part, replacing the footprint of a deck and adding about 2 feet extra.
Does the deck count in that 49.95 percentage?
It doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
They could steep off the back.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Orfis while he's here? All right, thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in support of the application? Subject screen, okay. Discussion, anybody want to share their thoughts on this one? I do appreciate the city's vigilance with respect to the application of the hardship test. Same time, I note that there are no neighbors in opposition, and the neighborhood association seems to support the application, seems to be consistent with surrounding properties. So.
Do you have a position on whether that 2,500 square foot lot size had any bearing on the exceptional condition?
So we do acknowledge that the lots in this area are smaller, as the applicant had mentioned. Some of the other lots do, we don't have the exact numbers, we just have the aerial comparison. But again, exceptional, different from the others. There are a number of lots within this area that are essentially the substandard in terms of their lot area. But I don't believe the applicant's representative is wrong in asserting that other lots that may be similarly situated in terms of their lot area have historically had larger footprints on those lots than this house has had. And again, like I said, it was a reluctant denial because what's being requested is very modest and, you know, we can easily see how in 2025 that makes the home more livable for a potential
Do you
family.
mind grabbing that as built and the proposed? So if we eliminate the deck, I'm just eyeballing this, it looks like they're extending the house about 3 feet, 2 feet. And then the steps off the back, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's about the width of the bathroom. I mean, I would defer to the applicant's the owner's representative, but I think it's about the 5-ish, a little less than 5 feet off the back where the new bathroom would be. Basically constitutes the new addition that's not already encapsulated within the area where the deck currently is.
Yeah, because you already calculated.
Yeah.
As part of the coverage.
Yeah.
So we're talking.
That's correct. I believe the full extension is about 3 foot 1.
3 foot 1.
And they're not encroaching into any rear setbacks or anything like that.
To that point, we are actually removing a little section of a plantation shutter and some other things that are currently in the side setback. So we're potentially making a side setback condition slightly better.
Correcting that non-conformity. Okay.
I can see where there's some difficulty in determining the hardship, but you know, I think, gosh, to me, the lack of square footage on the lot size and to me feels like a hardship. I would be inclined to support it, even if the city's position has been to deny.
I think the city's position is correct, but also willing to support you.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The variance is granted for 383 Sumter Street. We usually do defer a great deal to our city's sound recommendations, and this one was so close that we thought it would be appropriate to grant the variance. So
Thank you very much.
all right. So the next item on our agenda, B2, 414 Sumter Street, West Side, Council District 6, TMS number 460-07-02-099, Zone DR2F, requesting a special exception under Section 54-110 to build a rear addition, bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchens that extends a non-conforming east side setback 11.25 feet existing, 3 feet are required. The owner is Josh Thompson. The applicant is Patrick Orpheus, Arwen Studio. Mr. Summerfield.
Just to clarify for the record, that should had another apostrophe, so it's 11.25 inches, not.
Oh,
not
excuse
feet
me.
There, sorry.
Okay,
No,
got it.
that's our typo. Sorry about that. All right, so this property is also on Sumter Street in the West Side neighborhood. This is in the area of Miranda Holmes Street. Here you can see the aerial again on this lot. Luckily for staff, this one is a special exception, which does not have the stringency of a variance test. And again, this request is well within the lot coverage, setbacks. It's not exacerbating the situation, it's continuing an existing condition, just further along as they are proposing to make the house again a little more livable for modern family. You want to be able to keep folks living downtown as families. So with that, staff is recommending approval of this one. We did receive two comments on this. Both of them were, one was a petition with the number of signatures on it for support, as well as a separate email for an addition that was in support.
All right, thank you, Robert. Anybody here to speak in opposition to the application for 414 Sumter Street? Anybody here in opposition? Seeing no one, Mr. Orfis, anything you'd like to present to the board on this application, or are you good?
I'm good.
Thank you. All right, so any discussion or questions, or is there a motion?
Motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Is there a second? Richard seconds it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes unanimously, and the special exception for 414 Sumter Street is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next item on our agenda, B3, is deferred. Leads us to B4. 1118 King Street, North Central, Council District 4, EMS number 463-12-03-133, Zone GB, requesting a special exception under section 54-511 to allow a 2,211 square foot fitness studio providing 3 parking spaces. 6 spaces are required. The owner is Silas Smith. The applicant is Ellen Gonzalez. Public regard, Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is property located at the corner of King and Poplar. Poplar? Yes, I did. Right. Y'all don't know, me and the street names are not always the friendliest basis. So this is a stretch of King Street where, again, we see the kind of juxtaposition of a historic home on what has been rezoned to a commercial site, not just a commercial site, but general business, which is our most intense commercial zoning. So you do end up with the situation where we anticipate special exceptions for any non-residential use of the home, which quite a few uses would be permitted by right, including the use as a fitness center. So again, it's important to be clear here for the record. What's before you is a special exception for parking. It's not to approve the use. It's really honestly not to address the use. It's whether or not allowing a reduction in the parking that would be required for that use is appropriate given the unique circumstances of this property. So again, this is currently a structure that previously has been a residence. The zoning allows for it to be used for commercial purposes. You can see the aerial here, application. You can see kind of the information. They've identified their hours of operation, mostly a daytime enterprise with classes in the morning, in the afternoon, early evening, and then some Saturday and Sunday classes. Again, none of this is a restriction on the use. This is just what the owners have indicated. With different numbers of people that would be there at during those different classes that they would be having. See a picture of the front of the property there. They included some maps. As you can see here, the existing parking for the site is off of Poplar, and so the parking would be in the rear of the building with the activities for the use happening inside the building. You can see the floor plan here where they would have different exercise stations and then a spin studio on the second floor. We have spoken with building. And again, it's important to note parking is based off the square footage, not the number of patrons that might be utilizing the different things. So that's also another important distinction is You see a number of bikes here, clearly more than 6, but the square footage of the house or the building, the structure, when we calculate that out for the fitness center, that equals a requirement of 6 parking spaces. They do have a number of letters that should have been in your public comment packet from what I will imagine are some patrons as well as neighboring property on King Street that are in support, but also they have a number of letters from neighbors or emails that we've received or comments through the public portal of neighbors concerned about the parking reduction. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the special exception. Again, it is a special exception. We do acknowledge that, again, this is King Street. There's parking on King Street. There's street parking available across the street from this site on King Street. In order for this to be put to productive use per the zoning, a parking reduction for almost any activity that's not residential would be required based on the square footage of the building. So it's another one of those situations where we've zoned it to allow a thing, but the parking availability is just really not there. So with that, like I said, staff is recommending approval, acknowledging that there are some concerns from the neighbors about parking down on Poplar.
Is the main entrance to the facility on King Street or Poplar?
It would be based on the floor plan. I believe it's on King Street. So they would enter off of King Street, and then the applicant obviously can speak more to their floor plan. They are only having back of house operations towards the back off of Poplar and towards where the actual
And
residential
so
homes
those
are.
3 parking spaces, I'm assuming, are for employees of the business.
I based on the configuration, I would assume they probably are for employees since they're doing a tandem parking for the 3rd space. So it would not be inconceivable that that's for their employees. But yeah, so the floor plan shows back of house towards the thing. Entry is off of King Street, which is where we would want the entry for a commercial establishment. We wouldn't want to see that on Poplar. But again, that's just common stuff about accessing the site. Again, the only request before us for evaluation was parking. And again, this is another one where the zoning makes it just hard to put anything there that isn't residential because of the parking requirements.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody here to speak in opposition to the application for 1118 King Street? If you're here in opposition, just let me see your hand. All right, we don't have anybody here in opposition. Do we have the owner or the applicant present? All right, anything that you would like to say to the board this evening?
I think that we would mostly, we stand there.
If you do intend to speak, please come on up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Jillian Zettler,
My name is Chandler Frisbee.
and we are the co-founders and business owners. I think the piece that we would love to be able to add is that this is a small neighborhood fitness facility. It is not an open gym concept. What we love about this location is its walkability and bikeability, and with the plans for the low line, our hope is that that is actually like an encouragement of a warm-up activity to be at our space. So we very much appreciated our time with the neighborhood association. We got to spend the evening hearing from residents and absolutely understand their concerns. The way that our class sessions work is that they're 45 to 60 minutes maximum. And so it's a pretty transient situation where we don't expect people to be spending long clips of time. And yes, we were intending for staff to utilize the spaces in the back, especially for those that may be there for longer than 45 minutes with, cleaning, et cetera. As far as, a lot of things were referenced as it relates to parking plans, but we really know that the way that our business is set to operate is that it's a small clip of time in the morning and in the afternoon, and generally just very excited to be in a portion of the neighborhood where people enjoy biking and walking and being a part of the fabric of the North Central neighborhood.
Thank you. Any questions for the owner applicant?
Are y'all currently in operation?
We are, yeah, we launched the business about a year ago and we've been doing pop-up classes to get some brand recognition. And we're actually working with an owner of a building downtown and we'll be offering like a short-term pop-up in advance of what we hope to be construction of this site. But we've been really grateful to have partnerships with some special events that we've planned over the past year with entities like Spoleto and the College of Charleston and AFA. So, you know, the mission of our business is to be an entity that cultivates resilience and build joy. And we really are just looking for a modest space to be able to offer classes that hopefully enhance the well-being of the folks that live in and around the property.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for the business owners? Okay. Thank you. Anybody else wishes to speak in support of the application? All right, seeing no one else, we're ready for discussion. Anybody have any questions?
About the parking in the neighborhood, there was
I do.
kind of strong opposition.
I'm pretty concerned about parking in the neighborhood. I realize that the proposed use is it's a lot of people in one class. I don't know. My other question. My other question, Robert, maybe you can answer, would be about the sort of the way the special exceptions work from a moonlighting standpoint. So what would cause the special exception to be lost? Would it continue on with the property or does it continue only with the business that's operating in it? How does
So similar to an item we had a few weeks ago. So the special exception, if the use continues as it is, then the special exception would stay in place regardless of ownership. But because the special exception is for this particular use, then if something new were to come in that would have a different parking standard, then that use will need to come in and get a special exception for parking if they can't meet their parking, which they can't meet. So this isn't, you're not granting like a variance where you might grant 4 spaces, a reduction in 4 spaces. You're granting this special exception for this activity to allow 3 spaces. So as long as it stays that way, everything's great. If not, then it's got to come back in and get a new special exception for the new use.
And I guess the idea is that people would park on King Street. That's the.
That, I mean, again, for the applicant, their people, they expect to be arriving by maybe non-car means or a mix of non-car means. But yes, in looking at from the staff perspective, there's street parking on King Street, right across the street, that's available. We do understand, we did read the comments. We understand the concern of the neighbors, particularly since there are a couple vacant homes on Poplar, might make it look like, that there's more street parking on Poplar than eventually there may be when those homes get re-tenanted. But we would anticipate that people would be parking on King Street for this. Again, King Street is the access point, is the frontage. And we would assume that would be where they would be directed to park as members of the fitness club.
Do we know how this building has been historically used? It looks like it was a residence.
Historically, it's a residence. I believe it's still in that like it's still a residential configuration. They'll need to do remodeling. Like we checked with building, they're definitely gonna have to do some things, exit planning. Their floor plan is somewhat, might be argued as aggressive in terms of the use of the square footage. Unless they plan on sprinklering it, I don't think they're going to be able to get an occupancy that would allow for it to be that aggressively used. So, but I would leave it to the applicant and their design professional to speak more specifically to that.
And this would be a lease on the building.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Please.
How do your clients typically arrive at your current operation? Are they on foot or are they on bicycle, car?
It's been a mix, because we've been in a few different spaces. But I think that there's really great case examples of some other small fitness entities like ours that are in the North Central neighborhood. ACE, Charleston Boxing Gym, there's Pilates Studio, that there are a lot of people that are biking and walking. Fitness, especially because there's such a wonderful scene here in Charleston, kind of like coffee houses, you know, you go in proximity to who's close to you. And so, you know, we're not looking to cannibalize anybody else's business. I think it's just with the growth in this neighborhood, that's part of the reason why we thought it would be such a wonderful place to be.
Did you look at any other potential places to obtain parking?
To obtain parking. We haven't specifically done that, but we've been talking about ways that we would be able to, if it became a concern of the neighborhood. I mean, part of the reason that we requested to meet with the North Central Neighborhood Association was to immediately open lines of communication, so that if for some reason it becomes an issue, we can work together to make sure that that it's not an issue. The last thing you want to be is to walk into an area and be wanting to be a community driven space and irritate all the people around you. It's very counterintuitive to the mission that we have.
There's also a distance requirement with that parking, like I think they talked about encouraging their clients to park at the Food Lion parking lot, but that doesn't really count in our favor of something that's.
There is a bus stop that's
So-
close, and we plan to put up bike racks as well. You know, and we've even tossed around the idea of incentivizing those folks that walk and bike to use the space.
I just note for the record on the comments submitted, we have one online submission, comment and support. A second is anonymous, says North Central resident in opposition. Resident of 9 Poplar in opposition. The resident of 17 Poplar in opposition. And then 5 letters of support and a letter from the North Central Neighborhood Association, which to me seems neutral.
If I could add with our application, in total, we have over 20 letters of support from people in the North Central neighborhood. And, you know, we know that not everybody is, it's also an industry that we know people don't necessarily understand their business. No one understands it as much as the owners do. And there are some preconceived notions about how classes work based on the way that other studios may be perceived locally, and in the spaces and the places that we occupy, it's not meant to be a cattle call of people all day long. It's not the, it's just not the way that we run our business.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, concerns, questions for the city? Anything else these folks can answer?
I'm always deeply concerned about parking and that you know, it's tight no matter where you go. And I don't know that 3 spaces is really going to be, even if they had 6 spaces, it would still be, you know, potential challenge in the neighborhood. You know, that said, you know, I have a hard time. With parking requirements being an impediment to business and, you know, operations of the city, and city's position is approval. Or recommendation. I'm inclined to agree that maybe that's the way to go. You know, if y'all have any other thoughts or comments.
No, I think activating these property, creating an economy and is probably good for the neighborhood. The challenge always is going to be parking in the area.
And I, you know, typically I would also point out that if you're north, you know, Upper King, North Central is not, you know, exactly the most peaceful, least trafficked place in the city. If you're gonna try to live someplace that's very quiet without traffic. But at the same time, I also note that a lot of development has moved north in places that used to be quieter residential neighborhoods are now being inundated by business and cars and parking and tourism and restaurants and sorts of things. And I suppose that the property could always be used as to be converted back to a residence or I don't know how it's currently being used, but
My understanding right now it's vacant, but yes, I mean, again, it's GB allows for the residents, so yeah, so if at some point it could be converted back to residence, but to that point you just made, as a single family home, I don't know that I see it being that long term. Just given,
well, and obviously the zoning is not consistent.
and then that, yeah, that's not with the GB zoning that was applied to it. And again, that zoning has been there for years. That's not a new zoning. It,
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we gotta
And there
make
were
a
no
decision.
changes to the footprint of the building. It's-
correct, there, all of the,
And so those 3 parking places were there, and that's what.
yeah,
Oh, we are adding, we're accommodating one more parking spot, by modifying the driveway.
on site, yeah, it looks like looks like it was
Two
probably,
currently, you're gonna have permit 3 on there. What is, from a site plan perspective, what's back over here at the rear?
That's just, grass. I don't know.
I don't know if site design could accommodate another spot or not, but
You can squeeze a floor.
Yeah.
I assume any business going in here, it's the square footage, so any business is gonna need.
correct, almost all of our parking is based on square footages, given the 2,100 square feet. It's gonna require more than 2 parking spaces for just about anything that can go here.
so either you limit to a residential use, which is, as the city says, inconsistent with their planning, or you waive the parking requirement. What about office? Would office require that many spaces?
Yeah, again, with that square footage, yeah, because it's what, 400, yeah, so. we're looking at 500, so it still would require more than the 2 spaces that exist as a non-resident or as a residential property. Yeah, so any way we look at it, like I said, any commercial use of what is zoned commercial would either require scraping and building something new, which we don't want, or it would require the approval of a parking special exception. Again, it is the special exception, not the variance, so it's not the same level of stringent test.
And this will remain as long as it's a fitness studio.
Correct. And if a bakery wants to come in here, the bakery will have to come and get that different.
I'll make a motion for approval. And I'll just add a comment that I would strongly encourage the owners or the occupants of the centers to continue their engagement with the neighborhood, to be good stewards and to address their parking concerns actively. I think that's a huge component of being a good neighbor for the residents.
Making the second.
All right, so
Second.
Mr. Bennett is so moved and moved to approve, and Mr. McKay has seconded the motion. And you know, just thinking about it, I don't know if there is any condition that we could put on the approval to. I mean, I was thinking about, you know,
Municipal parking on Poplar Street, 2-hour residential.
I don't believe it's a residential district. I don't think so.
I don't know. I mean,
We always can go back to we could condition the special exception to the applicant is not to allow parking on Poplar. But as we've discussed before, that becomes an enforcement question.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who enforces that and how does it get communicated back to us if it's in fact not being adhered to?
And the challenge with Poplar on that side is it's dead end.
Yeah,
So it's not, you're not gonna have transient traffic cutting through there.
correct.
A good, bad, or indifferent. It's
Yeah.
just dead end. It's pretty.
All right, we got a pending motion. We got a second. Go ahead and vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. And the special exception for parking for 1118 King Street is granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is B5, 1208 Gilmore Road, Heathwood, Old Town, Council District 9, TMS number 418-02-00-047, zoned SR1. Requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to allow enclosure of an existing non-conforming carport having a 7.8-foot side setback into conditioned living space, 9 feet are required. The owner applicant is Kara Blasick, Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so you can see the property here in the aerial. This is within, as mentioned, the Heatherward Old Town neighborhood SR1 zoning. This is an oddly configured lot, very triangular on a curve, which gives it a very weird shape, gives it a little character too. In the aerial, you can see the house. The house is positioned, again, because of the nature of that shape, towards the widest part of the lot, which places it in what would that be, the northwestern, I think, side setback area. Here is the survey, some pictures of the site. Again, the proposed addition does not change the footprint of the structure itself. It maintains the same lot coverage. It's not impacting any setbacks from that aren't already impacted by the fact that there's existing roof line and carport. They do have support from their neighbors. Again, this is a special exception, so it does not have the same test as a variance, but arguably the lot configuration here would suggest that if you're going to do anything to add more living space, you really are limited in where you can go with that and not otherwise create issues with setbacks or other things. So staff is in support of this request.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody who's opposed to the application for 1208 Gilmore Road? Anybody in opposition? Nobody's in opposition. Do we have the owner applicant?
Yes,
Okay, anything you'd like to say to the board?
just thank you for the consideration. My husband and I love our neighborhood. We're expecting in May, so we're hoping to stay in our house for as long as we can. So appreciate the consideration.
Okay, thank you. I know that there are a couple letters of support in the file. Anybody have any questions? Are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the special exception for 1208 Gilmore Road is granted. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, B6, 9 Laps Court, East Side, Council District 4, TMS number 459-09-02-161, zoned East Side. Requesting a special exception under section 54-501 to build a single-family dwelling on a lot of insufficient size, 1,728 square feet are provided, 2,500 square feet are required, requesting a special exception under section 54-511 to provide 1 parking space, 2 spaces are required. Requesting a variance from section 54-301 to build the structure with a 0.96-foot north side setback and an 8-foot total side setback. 3 feet and 10 feet are required. The owner is Flipside SC LLC. Applicant is John Sullivan, S Architecture Studio LLC. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so as you can see here on the aerial, this is at the end of Lapis Court. It is a essentially a dead end court that is off of Amherst in the DFR 2F East Side neighborhood. Here you can see the aerial. These are two vacant lots. They essentially sit behind International Business High School. Anyone? Anyone? I believe that's going to be the International.
Yeah, it's under construction. now.
Yeah. So they're essentially behind that area, but that is a high school that is under construction. I believe it's International or Business High School, one of the two or both. At any rate, from the packet, you can see the proposal is to build a relatively narrow, fairly modest home on what is an existing single-family lot. You can see from the elevations, again, it's kind of a long two-story home. Nothing extravagant in the request. The lot is very small, substandard for our requirements. City wants to see housing. We want to see housing back in places where housing has been before. For those reasons, staff is in support of the special exception and variance request for this item.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody in opposition to the application for 9 Labs Court? All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here? Mr. Sullivan, anything you'd like to say to the board?
No, just that, there was a house here before in 1902. It's a historic lot, which tried to be as modest and careful as possible and try to meet everything we could with zoning to get at least one parking spot on the site.
Okay. All right, any questions for the city? Any questions for the applicant?
I just had one question.
Yep.
Is there a building on this lot currently? Okay, so the demo, I might have had my sheets mixed up. That's fine. Turn off. No question. That's it.
All right, no other discussion, is there a motion?
I'll move for approval.
All right, yeah. Mr. Bennett has moved to approve. Ms. Richards has seconded the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. The motion passes. The special exception number 1, special exception number 2, and variance for 9 Labs Court are granted. All right, the next item on our agenda, B7, we're still on Labs Court, 11 Labs Court, East Side, Council District 4, TMS number 459-09-02-160, zoned East Side, requesting a special exception under section 54-501 to build a single-family dwelling on a lot of insufficient size, 1,749 square feet provided, 2,500 are required, requesting a special exception under section 54-511 to provide 1 parking space. 2 are required, requesting a variance from section 54-301 to build the structure with a 1.49 foot front setback, 1 foot north side setback, and an 8 foot total side setback. 25 feet, 3 feet, and 10 feet are required. The owner is Palmetto Equity Solutions. The applicant is John Sullivan, S Architecture and Studio LLC. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so just like the last item, this is again on an existing single-family lot in an area where virtually none of the lots can meet the development standards that we have today. The proposal is a very similar structure to what you saw moments ago on the neighboring lot. Again, relatively modest home, 2 stories, relatively narrow and long to make up the necessary living space for a modern family to be able to live here. Because the city is interested in seeing single-family homes and housing in places where single-family homes and housing have existed in the past. We are supportive for all of those reasons previously said of the special exception request and the variance for working.
Thank you, Robert. Anybody here in opposition?
Variances, period.
Yeah. Anybody here in opposition to the applications for 11 Labs Court? All right, seeing no one in opposition, Mr. Sullivan. No round 5th discussion. Okay. Anybody have any questions? We're ready to vote.
I'll make a motion for.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The special exception number one, special exception number two, and variance for 11 Lapse Court are granted. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. All right, the next item on our agenda, B8, is deferred. That's 176 Smith. Now we're on to B9. 136 Maple Street, Wagner Terrace, Council District 6, TMS number 463-11-01-052, zoned SR2, requesting a special exception under section 54-110 to build a rear addition bedroom that extends a non-conforming west side setback. The owner is Tobias Hyman. The applicant is BZA-Z Architects, Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, so this is, as you can kind of see here, is sort of in the area of Maple and Piedmont, in the SR2 neighborhood that's part of Wagner Terrace. Here in the aerial, you can see the way the house sits on the lot. The applicant provided some additional aerials and photos of the house. So the proposal is to, for an addition, apologize, I've got to bring up my, in the rear of the rear of the home. And it does extend an existing non-conforming setback. Again, this is, the house is already built over that setback. This is not exacerbating that in any way. It's just extending it further to add some additional space to the home to make it more livable. We appreciate the fact that the applicant is not proposing to go up. Again, we encourage the context of the neighborhood and particularly the context of the single family home that's existing. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the special exception.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody here in opposition to the application for 136 Maple Street? Anybody here in opposition? Seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here? Yes, sir. Anything you'd like to say to the board? Okay.
Very short. My name is Joel Trantham with the BZA-Z Architects, here representing Tobias Hyman. This application is stated as just a modest extension of that setback. We'd like to point out to you that our owner met with all of the immediate neighbors. That's 917, 921, 925 Ashley, as well as the immediate neighbor at 138 Maple Street. Yes, met, visited, and spoke with each of them, no objections. We've also reached out to HCF and Preservation Society, and they have no comment on this. We would appreciate your support for this modest special exception.
Okay, thank you. I have any questions? So motion.
Motion for approval.
All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Is there a second?
I'll say.
All right, Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the special exception for 136 Maple Street is granted. Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda, B10, 130 Hester Street, Wagner Terrace, Council District 6, TMS number 463-08-01-138, zoned SR2. Requesting variances from section 54-301 to build a rear addition, living room, bedroom, bathroom, and porch having a 9-foot 7¼ rear setback, 7-foot 7½ north side setback, and 8-foot 2" south side setback. 25 feet, 9 feet, and 9 feet are required. Requesting a variance from section 54-301 to build a front porch that does not meet the north side setback. 8 feet are proposed, 9 feet are required. The owner is Adam Morrow. The applicant is Joel Adrian, Coastal Creek Design. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so as you can see, this is kind of mid-block on Hester here in the Wagner Terrace neighborhood, again in an SR2 neighborhood or zoning district. You can see the aerial, how the house sits on the site currently. Sort of you can see it through the trees. We do have plans that show the proposed, well, this is the survey of the existing, and then you can see the proposed changes. The design professional also color coded it so you can see where it was outside of the lines with the addition and what's inside the lines on the addition. A little bit more detail on the modification to add the living space and adjustments for an owner suite and what have you. Again, this is a proposal that is keeping the character of the small single-story home. It is adding some additional living space to make the home more livable for the family. We did initially, staff did have concerns about the fact that the proposal was impacting essentially all four sides of the lot in terms of setback issues. However, we have had conversations with the design professional, and the applicant is amenable to making some adjustments to these plans that would keep the same general character of the additions, but instead of putting a porch that pushes out the front setback issue, as well as some, really, it was a very minor additions to the, oh, I'm gonna get it wrong, the plan, right, which I believe is, what would that be, east, south, I don't know, maybe the applicant can tell us the direction. Anyway, plan right, they're gonna pull that that part of the addition in so that there's no setback variance there. With those changes and given the relatively minor nature, the one setback is just a continuation of the existing non-conforming setback on the opposite side, what was planned left. Here, staff is going to support this as follows, that the request is for the variance for the rear addition, and I think I mistyped this because I put north side, but north side is the. So plan left, we'll correct this, but we wanted to just be the plan left on the back side would be the only setback variances, and that they would update, provide revised drawing consistent with the approval for the rear plan left side setback variance to the zoning division within 15 days, so we can update the application to reflect the approval, assuming that it is approved. And that is staff's recommendation.
All right, thank you, Robert. Anybody here in opposition to the application for 130 Hester? Seeing no one, Mr. Adrian, you want to address these conditions and any other issues?
Joel Adrian, applicant for designer, sorry, for 130 Hester, and I did get to speak with Mr. Summerfield, and we've agreed, if you go to the, into that site plan, I think you were correct, I think the plan to work is the extending of the non-conforming, but if you look here, what we're going to be doing is on the right-hand side here, which would be the south side. So we're gonna pull this back in so that instead of having 8'2" and an 8 foot, basically it was 8'7" or 8'8", we'll get that to conform with the required 9 foot. Right side, we have adjusted our design and are not gonna change the front porch. So the front porch will remain the same. So if you look at that little shaded area on the left there will no longer be required. The existing porch will remain unchanged, other than we want to swap out columns. And then, so our request really is to extend north or left side non-conforming side setback and add in the rear with our 1-story addition. The existing house is like just over 1,000 square feet, so very, very tight. It was positioned to, substantially off the front property line. It's about 36 feet off the front, which is really what's kind of forcing having to add to the rear. I'll answer any questions John might have. I do have letters of support from the adjacent neighbors that I can pass on.
Okay, but you consent to the conditions that
Yes, sir.
Summerfield is describing. Thank you.
Sir? I did have it right. It is the north side.
Yes.
Yeah, if you go back about 4 drawings, you have a parking lane. Go back one more. One. Maybe. On the left hand side. So, Mr. Summerfield, the conditions that you were talking about, is that 9-foot setback on the south side. And then there is an additional comment about pulling the rear back in, is that correct?
No, so we would be approved, you all would be approving the rear encroachment into the setback. And then the continuation of the north side setback encroachment for that addition, which is essentially the part on this plan. Let's see, I don't know. Can we see my arrow? Yes, so it would be this part right here. Would be the new kind of encroachment there to match up with the existing encroachment from the existing main house. So that would be where, in talking with Mr. Adrian, they're going to push this in so that it meets the setback requirement. And they're not going to make these adjustments to the porch that would have had it coming out to the side here and to the front here outside of the setback window. So with those changes, because again, they do have this grand tree right here that kind of push the house back a little bit. So they, they have this nice porch, but really there's arguably some lost area that they could have, building envelope that they could have built in if not for the tree and what have you, getting it pushed back. So staff is in support of the additional essentially area. It's 400-ish square feet or what have you in the rear for this home.
Is there a lot coverage issue?
No.
I guess because it's so far back on the lot, it's not, even though you lose almost the entire backyard, you still have plenty of frontage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, with that exaggerated front yard setback, it still leaves a lot of the lot.
Can you pop up the board recommendation? That's all it's like.
Yeah, so we would ask that the board only approve the variance for the rear addition and the north side setback. And that they would then require that the applicant submit revised drawings consistent with those two parts of the approval to the zoning division within 15 days.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval with conditions 1 and 2 for the staff recommendations.
All right, we got a motion to approve with conditions as recommended by the city. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Mr. McKay makes seconds the motion. Any other discussion? Go ahead and vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the variances to the extent not impacted by the conditions upon those conditions that are recommended by the city, which we will attach to the approval, is granted. You understood what I said, right?
Got
Okay.
Have a great evening.
All right. Thank you. All right, we're down to the final item on our agenda, and that is B 1199 Hanover Street, East Side, Council District 4, TMS number 459-05-01-080, Zone DR2, requesting variances from section 54-301 to build a single-family dwelling unit with a 47.5% lot occupancy, 35% is allowed, and to allow an elevated HVAC to encroach into a south side setback. 4 feet are proposed, 7 feet are required. The owner is Perch LLC. The applicant is Matt McCauley, Permit Expediters of SC LLC, Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this item, as you can see, is on the corner of Lee and Hanover. Here in this DR2 block within the East Side neighborhood. You can see an aerial here. This is right across the street from Martin Park and the MLK pool. Right? Yes. You can see the proposed home. You can see there on the side where they have the elevated HV stand. It is a two-story home, which is, if you look at the aerial, very prevalent in this neighborhood, although I believe the current property is not a two-story structure. Again, this is a very narrow lot, very reminiscent of a lot of lots in that area. It was, from a staff perspective, when we were looking at this one, we actually did try to do an analysis of other homes on this block in terms of the lot coverage thing, because we were very curious about that. This would be, the proposed lot coverage for this would be very consistent with what we found to be the prevalence on the lot, because the lots are relatively small in comparison to other lots compared to the zoning. And so again, wanting to see a home that's occupiable on this lot, given the fact that there are some circumstances with the way the lot is shaped in terms of its narrowness, and looking at just other lots in this block, and the amount of lot coverage they have in order to have the residences that they do. Staff is recommending approval of this variance.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody in opposition to the application for 99 Hanover Street here? All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner or applicant here?
My name is Matt McCauley. My address 171 Church Street, Suite 340, Charleston, South Carolina. I think more or less we've pretty much spelled out the case in the submittal documents, but I just did want to make specific mention that while our request is very much in keeping with the neighborhood, we have also gone through several exercises in removing other proposed non-conforming items. We made some modifications to front and rear porches, the access to them, so that we were compliant with setbacks, reduce the overall height. What was initially proposed was a drive under home in order to provide on-street parking. We were able to adjust the home backwards in order to provide the required parking on site, which is unusual, it seems, these days. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know we have made those efforts to bring this into conformance to the extent possible.
All right, Ms. Richards has a question for you.
Chairman, for the record, I did want to just mention, we did have one letter in opposition.
I saw that, and is it the comment that was submitted via the Innovate side, or was there another letter?
No, so that was our only letter in opposition.
Yeah, okay. All right, Ms. Richards.
My question was just regarding the HVAC unit. Is there not somewhere else to put that? I mean, I think it really would make your case a little stronger if that was not requested as well.
Certainly,
The other request.
that I recall, and I can look back at the plan, I don't believe that there's a location that's an approvable location that would not also require a variance that could be placed on the property. Unfortunately, we do have to elevate it due to flood requirements. I know otherwise we wouldn't need to make the request. I think the cause of needing a variance for that is that it is not on grade.
Yes, if it was at grade, it would not require a variance, but because it has to be elevated, there's structural components and therefore it's an encroachment in the setback.
We have made efforts to put it in what we feel like is the least intrusive location, you know, as far as visibly from our neighboring properties as well as from the right of way.
Can you look at it in plan? Can you pull it back up?
Yeah. Which page?
That's it.
Under that triple window,
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean,
sort of a carbuncle on the side.
it is. But I also agree it's tough to find a spot, but
Has there been consideration to locating it on the roof of the rear porch?
We have not considered that, but certainly could.
Mr. Summerfield, you felt that the variance test here was because of the other properties in the area being of similar lot size?
Yeah, so this one, unlike the one we heard earlier where it didn't jump out immediately to us that the lot coverage in the neighboring properties. This one did immediately kind of jump out at us when we were looking at the aerial that that lot coverage is well over 50%. It's definitely over the 35%. It's 35%, yeah, the 35%, but in number of cases, it was well over 50%. Just again, given the historic nature of this community, the way it was platted, and narrowness of some of the lots, and that means you have to do a long house, which then, yeah. I can't get. Is the admin or? So, Mr. Bennett has just pointed out to me that there is, since this is actually a new build, they don't have any existing accessory structures, which again is weird as it may sound, a stand for your HVAC system is an accessory structure, because it's a structure. So we do actually have an exception that they can do that can be done administratively. If the footprint doesn't exceed 100 square feet. And it could be potentially in a side or rear setback. So, that is something that they could potentially look at, as an approvable thing. I think the issue here is because it's actually on the house, it encroaches, so it's not a separate stand as an accessory structure. So that's why it's set up as a part of the variance instead of being able to use the special exception as a kind of standalone thing.
So if it were mounted on a ground, on a platform that was set on grade.
Immediately under where it's current, yeah, it would actually be something that would be approved as an exception administratively.
Right.
So that is something to just be.
It couldn't go in its current location. That exception requires that it be to the rear of the building.
Okay.
So
That would impact
as
the porch.
nitpicking as it kind of may be.
that was like that butane, when we had a couple
Mhm.
months back.
Mr. Summerfield, I have a question that it kind of leads to the technical side of things. How does a DR2 and a DR2F differ? It seems like the lot coverage was 50% on one of them, but it's 37 on the other. Is that like the subtle differences between them? Or would that require digging?
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, honestly, the nuances of our little distinctions is one of the things we're digging into on the zoning rewrite to try to figure out historically why we have DR2F and then just like why do we have SF 1 through 8? It's yeah. I think lot area is usually, or lot coverage is usually the big separate. Occasionally it's lot width, but lot coverage is usually the big determiner. Unless the team tells me there's another one that I'm just not thinking of right now.
And I have one thing. I just want to say that prior to me having to be on extended leave, I worked with this applicant, and Craig and I worked on it. We had 2 other plans that did not meet zoning requirements that we would not support. So I'm very pleased that with working with Craig and Robert, that they have come up with a plan that at least mirrors closer the requirements for zoning to build on a very challenged lot. So I just wanted to add that because he probably got maybe even tired of me saying, no, this wouldn't work, that's not gonna work. And so finally, they have a plan that should work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ashby.
Can I get one more look at the site plan?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go back.
You want me to magnify?
No, I'm sorry, let's go back to, A6. From the roof line, looking straight down, I want to see how close that air conditioner is to the sideline.
4 feet from the property line.
Yeah. See.
Do I have one that does what you want?
Hey, now look at there, it doesn't show it on
It
that.
doesn't show it on this one.
It's behind that couch.
Yeah, it's over there
Yeah,
by the
I
three
was gonna say, should be
windows.
right
Yeah,
in
right there,
here.
'cause 3 windows are.
Mr. Bennett, if the air conditioner has an ADU or a separate structure were located, how far to the rear would it have to be behind the last, behind that wall, or would it have to be further to the rear, even behind the porch that's on the back? Entirely behind the house.
The way we've, typically applied that, in the past is just behind the house, behind the rear facade of the building decided to.
Okay, I think so. So it wouldn't have to go further out even than the porch itself. It would be, or would it? How far back is the rear of the house, I guess is what I'm asking.
So.
Okay.
Report of the porch structure.
Doesn't this mean that they would still need this variance?
It would be the same lot occupancy then, assuming it stands the same size.
Okay. Nice. So
In
they,
the rear of the principal building.
okay.
All right, any other questions?
I don't know if any more questions. I guess my comments, I'm a little hung up on the air conditioner. I think the rest of it, I think I'm generally okay with.
Somehow put it in the back of the building.
Just for clarification, if it's moved to the rear, what is our allowable encroachment into the rear setback?
We as close as 18 inches from your rear inside property lines.
Okay, thank you.
So there would be,
So then, Mr. Bennett, are you thinking that you might motion for just the variance for the lot occupancy then and strike the second part
Yes.
or deny that part essentially?
Yeah, I would strike that second part for the elevated HVAC. The issue I would be concerned with is that, it is gonna, I think it would be a challenge even to relocate it somewhere else because you're getting further away from the body of the building. Now you've got to find a new way to run, lines and everything else. The only real, I guess, potentially viable option, I think, would be to set on top of the roof of the rear porch. Now, I'm not trying to solve the problem for them, but
Right.
I just, to me, that HVAC unit on the side is really, it just doesn't fit. I feel like it's gonna really be an impediment to using that side yard. So I guess on that, and we can go to discussion after, I'm gonna make a motion for approval of the variance for the lot coverage only, and not for the side setback.
okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, Ms. Richards seconds the motion. Any further discussion? I want to talk about I don't want to talk about the HVAC. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. So the motion passes. The motion grants one variance, but not the other. The variance for the single-family dwelling unit with 47 with 5 lot occupancy is granted. The elevated HVAC structure encroaching into the south side setback is not approved. And we hope that you can find another solution for that issue.
And if you could reach out to Mr. Bennett and he can talk you through 54506, the special exception for that allows for the accessory structure within the setback. Okay?
Thank you. All right, that concludes our meeting.
Then our next meeting is not until January 21st, 2025.
Right.